happens when doctors find alcohol crystals growing inside a human spine? When a major studio creates a special team just to manage one star's drinking? When Hollywood legends start hiding liquor in baby food and thermos bottles labeled as juice? These aren't just stories about celebrities who drank too much. These are medical nightmares that Hollywood buried for decades. One star's autopsy revealed damage so severe, doctors couldn't believe he'd lived that long. The stories we're about to tell you were buried by studios for years, but the truth always comes out eventually. Richard Burton. Richard Burton was one of the greatest actors of his time, but behind all the fame and talent was a man slowly drinking himself to death. He began drinking alcohol when he was just 11 years old. By the time he turned 12, he was already drinking regularly, just like his father, who was known to drink 12 pints a day. At his worst, Burton was drinking up to 3 bottles of vodka a day, and that was often just the start. He added whiskey, cognac, or whatever else was available. He once claimed he could drink half a gallon of cognac or a fifth of whiskey during a stage performance and still deliver his lines without slipping. During his time at Oxford, he famously drank a yard of beer in 10 seconds flat, treating it like a party trick. But the real horror wasn't in the bragging. It was inside his body. Just 3 years before his death, doctors discovered that his spine was coated in crystallized alcohol. That meant his body had absorbed so much alcohol over the years that it had literally started to preserve itself from the inside. No actor's reputation for drinking was more gruesomely proven by science. His behavior on set often turned into a disaster. During the 1974 shoot of The Klansman, he was so drunk he couldn't stand upright, so they had to film his scenes sitting or lying down. In Mexico, while filming The Night of the Iguana, he suddenly jumped into the ocean to chase a shark. Except there was no shark. It was all in his imagination, warped by alcohol. His work began to suffer badly. While shooting The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, he had to drink a glass of whiskey in one scene. It took 47 takes. The crew suspected he was messing up on purpose just to drink more. And by 1974, when he was 49 years old, his liver was already badly damaged. Burton kept a diary during these years, and his entries are painful to read. In October 1975, right after he remarried Elizabeth Taylor, he wrote that he got shamefully sloshed on their wedding night. The next entries were full of regret and loss of control. Drank enormously and cheated when E wasn't looking. And later, can't control my hands, so cannot write anymore. Very silly. Booze. The words show a man who knew what he was doing to himself, but couldn't stop. His drinking wasn't just about habit or party culture, it came from somewhere darker. Burton struggled with deep depression and had frequent suicidal thoughts. He once said his dreams were always stuck in November, and it's raining, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning. After his brother Ifor died in 1972, he drank even more, like he didn't care whether he lived or died. In 1981, he tried to sober up. He said alcoholism was worse than cancer, but the damage had already been done. On August 5, 1984, at age 58, he died of a cerebral hemorrhage in Switzerland. Doctors made it clear, years of heavy drinking had destroyed his brain and his body. His death wasn't sudden, it was slow, it was painful, and it was entirely preventable. John Barrymore. John Barrymore was once called the Great Profile because of his striking looks and powerful screen presence. But behind the fame was a life that quickly spiraled out of control. His battle with alcohol began alarmingly early. He was just 14 when he was expelled from Georgetown for drinking. At 15, things got worse. His grandmother, whom he deeply loved, passed away. Around the same time, he got involved in a traumatic affair with his father's young wife. The pain from that chapter never left him. He told a doctor that he was already a chronic drunkard. His brother Lionel later said he never felt safe after that. As Barrymore's fame grew, so did the damage. By the 1930s, alcohol had eaten away at his memory. He couldn't remember lines. Sometimes he couldn't even remember which character he was playing. While filming Hat, Coat, and Glove in 1934, he forgot everything. Lines, scenes, even his character's name. RKO had no choice but to replace him with Ricardo Cortez, and it wasn't a one-time incident. These memory lapses became more common. He had to rely on cue cards and even chalkboards placed off camera to make it through scenes. His addiction reached terrifying lows. One night, his second wife, Blanche Ulrichs, caught him trying to drink her cologne. He was so desperate, anything with alcohol would do. At a christening, he picked up a baby and pretended to play rugby with it, horrifying everyone there. That's how unpredictable he had become. He was also losing money fast. He spent around $800 a day just for hospital treatments and rehab. By 1937, he was buried in debt. He owed $160,000 and filed for bankruptcy. Studios didn't want to take chances on him anymore. MGM gave him one more opportunity as Mercutio in Romeo and Juliet in 1936. But even then, they kept him in a sanatorium during production. He still managed to sneak in alcohol and cause problems on set. His body began to reflect all the years of damage. Co-star Basil Rathbone remembered how painful it was to watch him work. He said Barrymore was always drinking and completely unreliable. The once beautiful face that had earned him the title The Great Profile became bloated and warped. The charm was gone. The legend had crumbled. On May 29, 1942, John Barrymore died at just 60 years old. The cause was cirrhosis of the liver and kidney failure. After decades of trying to fight off the addiction, or simply giving into it, his body gave out. Hollywood lost one of its brightest stars that day. Errol Flynn was one of the biggest stars of his time. With his sharp jawline and devil-may-care smile, he looked like the kind of man who could outrun any danger. But there was one enemy he couldn't escape. Flynn once bragged that he drank 100 pints of beer in a single day. It was impossible, of course, but that wasn't the point. He loved the myth. The truth was even darker. In his final years, he was downing 2 to 3 quarts of vodka every single day. That much alcohol would kill most people in days. He lasted years. When Warner Brothers banned drinking on set, Flynn didn't stop. He just got sneakier. He used a syringe to inject vodka into oranges, then ate them between takes like they were just part of his healthy breakfast. Every morning, he carried a leather bag onto the set. It looked like a doctor's bag, but it held 2 full bottles of vodka. That was his medicine. As time went on, the charm faded. He started drinking vodka for breakfast. His body swelled. His face looked tired and bloated. The man who once played heroes was now a shell. People whispered that he looked like a ghost of himself, but he kept going. He got hepatitis, but it didn't stop him. He told friends in 1959, "My lungs have had it, and the quacks say my liver is shot to hell." That same year, on October 14th, he collapsed and died in Vancouver. He was just 50 years old. The autopsy showed his body was wrecked, a blocked artery in the heart, a liver that was swollen and scarred, a colon full of damage. The doctors were shocked he'd lived that long. And yet, in some strange way, he'd prepared for the end. He was buried with 6 bottles of his favorite whiskey. Even in death, the drink was there. What makes it all worse is that Flynn knew. He saw it coming. In his own words, he wrote, "Alcohol is a far greater killer than all opiates. It gets your brain, your liver. It destroys your morals, destroys your vitality." W.C. Fields. W.C. Fields was one of the funniest men in Hollywood, but behind the laughs, he was slowly drinking himself to death. Every day, he downed about 2 quarts of liquor. That's nearly 2 full bottles. He started his mornings with bourbon, not just 1 glass. He had 10 drinks before most people had lunch. Then came 6 martinis in the evening. This wasn't a wild weekend habit. This was his life, every single day. Somehow, he kept working. During the movie Tales of Manhattan in 1942, he always had a flask in hand. When the crew begged him to stop drinking because they were falling behind schedule, he smirked and said it was lemonade for his acid condition. He even got co-star Phil Silvers to lie for him. Silvers took a sip, realized it was pure gin, and still told the producers it was lemonade. He became a master of hiding alcohol in plain sight. One of his favorite tricks was filling his thermos with martinis and labeling it pineapple juice. That way, no one would question what he was drinking. One day, a stagehand knocked over his whiskey bottle and the cork rolled away. Fields saw the mess and shouted, "Who took the cork out of my lunch?" Another time, someone actually did fill his thermos with real pineapple juice. He took a sip, gagged, and yelled, "Somebody's been putting pineapple juice in my pineapple juice." Even prohibition couldn't stop him. Once, he and a friend went to Long Island to buy illegal Irish whiskey. On the way back, they drank 3 full bottles. They were so drunk, they completely lost track of where they were going. When they finally sobered up, they were shocked to find themselves in a hotel room in Florida, more than 1,000 kilometers from home. Years of heavy drinking left visible scars. His nose became large, swollen, and red from rhinophyma, a skin condition made worse by alcohol. Doctors saw it so often in severe alcoholics, they started calling it W.C. Fields syndrome. His internal organs suffered even worse. In 1937, he got so sick, he was hospitalized for 23 days. The doctor later sued him for $12,000, blaming Fields' non-stop drinking for ruining the treatment. But none of that stopped him. He kept drinking, kept joking, and kept fooling people, right up until the end. He died on Christmas Day in 1946, at 66 years old. The official cause was a liver condition brought on by years of alcohol abuse. Humphrey Bogart. Humphrey Bogart was the ultimate tough guy on screen. Cool voice, sharp looks, and always in control. But in real life, he was drinking before most people had even started lunch. By noon, he often had his first drink in hand. He had one rule while filming: wrap up by 6 p.m. That way, his hairdresser and secret girlfriend, Verita Peterson, could bring him his evening scotch on time. From there, it was a well-rehearsed routine. A stop at Romanoff's for a strong drink before lunch, the Brown Derby for more in the afternoon, and then back home to his private bar. He called it the Butternut Room. It was lined with polished wood and always filled with friends like Frank Sinatra, Richard Burton, and John Huston. They all drank together deep into the night. Bogart wasn't a wild drunk. He liked control. Friends joked that he had an alcoholic thermostat. He drank just enough to stay glowing, not sloppy, just steady. Whether it was scotch, gin, martinis, or black velvets, he always topped off just before slipping. Most nights, he easily finished a whole bottle of scotch. While filming The African Queen in Africa in 1951, Bogart managed to stay healthy while nearly everyone else got sick from the local water. His secret? He drank only whiskey. Some said he went through a full quart every day. He believed it was the only reason he didn't get dysentery. But not every moment was funny. One morning, during a shoot at Warner Brothers, he showed up wearing nothing but pajamas and riding a bicycle. He ignored everyone yelling at him to work and kept shouting, "Look, no hands!" The studio boss, Jack Warner himself, had to come down and tell him that even Bogart's salary couldn't keep up with his scotch bill. Even his religious moments were soaked in booze. Once, he was set to give a prayer at the Hollywood Bowl on Easter. But at 4 a.m., someone found him drunk at a friend's place. Somehow, he still made it to the stage. He recited the Lord's Prayer so beautifully that it made people cry. Then he turned to a fan and said, "Where can I puke?" The years caught up fast. His liver and brain started failing. He became tired all the time and sometimes forgot simple things. In January 1956, doctors found he had cancer in his esophagus. Heavy drinking and smoking were to blame. He went through a 9-hour surgery. For a little while, he stopped drinking, but not for long. Lauren Bacall, his wife, joked that his recovery included 3 martinis a day. That was the prescription. The cancer returned fast. On January 4, 1957, Bogart died at just 57 years old. His final words were sharp, ironic, and sad. "I never should have switched from scotch to martinis." Spencer Tracy Spencer Tracy was one of the greatest actors of his time. But behind the scenes, his life was a battle with something far darker than fame could fix. He wasn't the kind of drunk who drank every day. Tracy could stay sober for months, sometimes even years. But once he took that first drink, it triggered something terrifying. His binges were brutal and lasted for weeks. They left his life, career, and relationships in pieces. His biographer, Bill Davidson, described a disturbing pattern that repeated itself over and over. Tracy would take long train rides to New York, check into the St. George Hotel with a suitcase full of whiskey, and lock himself in the bathroom. He would strip naked and stay in the bathtub for an entire week, drinking constantly. He never got out, not even to use the toilet. It happened so often, it became part of his legend. MGM, desperate to keep their star functioning, created what they called the Tracy Squad. It included a doctor, an ambulance driver, and 4 security guards. Their job? Follow Tracy, clean up after him, and make sure he didn't ruin everything. No other studio ever went this far to manage one man's drinking, but it wasn't just the drinking. Tracy became violent. In 1944, during one of his rages, he tried to strangle Katharine Hepburn. She fought him off and locked him in a closet to protect herself. He would hit her during other binges too. And the next day, he wouldn't even remember. He once beat up a prostitute in New York so badly he was banned from the brothel. Another time, he woke up in a padded cell in Chicago with no memory of how he got there. In June 1934, while filming Marie Galante, he vanished. The studio found him nearly unconscious in his hotel after 2 weeks of non-stop drinking. Fox was so furious, they sued him for $125,000, a massive amount back then, and cut him off the payroll. A 1942 medical report from Johns Hopkins laid it out clinically. Every 8 months, Tracy went on a drinking binge that lasted up to 10 days. But by then, alcohol wasn't enough. He mixed it with sleeping pills to crash and used Dexedrine to stay awake. It was a dangerous cycle. His body finally began to give out. In 1963, doctors rushed him to the hospital with pulmonary edema. His heart was failing, and his lungs were filling with fluid. It was years of alcohol and drugs catching up. He got sober, but the pain didn't stop. Even 5 years later, he said he still looked at a martini with as much longing as the day I quit. He died in 1967. Worn out by the war, he fought in silence. William Holden. William Holden was another star whose demons stayed hidden for too long. By the 1970s, his counselor had no doubts. Holden's alcoholism was severe and dangerous. Unlike Tracy, his addiction wasn't explosive. It was constant, woven into his daily life. He drank not for celebration or sorrow, but to survive. Every morning before filming, he called ahead to make sure his drinks were ready. He used the phrase, "warm the ice cubes," but everyone knew what it meant. Billy Wilder, one of his closest collaborators, said Holden drank to hold himself together, just to get through each scene. His drinking created chaos. In 1964, while filming Paris When It Sizzles, he got so drunk he tried to climb into Audrey Hepburn's dressing room window. He fell, but somehow didn't die. He was known to do handstands on balcony railings and once dangled by just 2 fingers from a 10-story window. People thought he had superhuman strength or a death wish. While shooting The Seventh Dawn, he collapsed from drinking and ended up hospitalized in Switzerland. That scared him straight for a while, but the addiction always came back. Eventually, it claimed everything. On November 12, 1981, Holden was alone in his Santa Monica apartment. He drank 8 to 10 strong cocktails, tripped over a rug, and slammed his head into the sharp corner of a nightstand. The hit was so hard that it cracked the furniture and punched a hole in the wall. The gash above his right eye was 2 inches deep. The saddest part? He was still conscious. For nearly 30 minutes, he tried to stop the bleeding using tissues. He was just steps away from a phone that could have saved him, but he never made the call. His blood alcohol level was 22, more than twice the legal limit. 1 empty vodka bottle sat nearby. The second bottle was almost full. 4 days passed before anyone found him. The building manager discovered the body, and the scene was haunting. Billy Wilder, who had once called him the ideal actor, summed up the tragedy with a bitter line: "Killed by a bottle of vodka and a night table. What a lousy fade-out for a great guy." Gail Russell was born in 1924, and by the time she was 20, Hollywood had already claimed her. She had a haunting beauty, but she also had a secret that would destroy her: crippling shyness. On the set of The Uninvited in 1944, she took her first drink to calm her nerves. It worked, at least for a while, but that one drink turned into a dangerous habit. Actress Yvonne DiCarlo later said it was Helen Walker who showed Gail how vodka could tranquilize the nerves. Within a year, she couldn't get through a scene without alcohol. She kept a bottle in her dressing room. She drank between takes. She drank before work. She drank after. By 1950, everyone knew she had a problem. Paramount didn't renew her contract. Her career crumbled. So did her life. In 1953, she was arrested for drunk driving. The next year, she was fined $150, about $1,760 today, and told by the court to stay sober for 2 years. She didn't. In October that same year, she slipped into a coma from hepatitis. But the worst was still to come. At 4 a.m. on July 5, 1957, she drove her convertible through the glass window of Jan's coffee shop on Beverly Boulevard. A janitor was trapped beneath her car. She failed the sobriety test. The judge asked how many drinks she had. She said, maybe 2, maybe 4. I don't know how many. It's no one's business but my own. The janitor sued her for $75,000. Her personal life was just as messy. In 1953, John Wayne's wife accused Gail of sleeping with him and said Wayne gave her a car for it. Gail's own marriage to actor Guy Madison was falling apart. He said she never cleaned, never let people in, and lived like a ghost in their house. She spent her last years alone in a small house on Bentley Avenue, surrounded by unfinished paintings and bottles of vodka. On August 26, 1961, neighbors found her body. She was 36. Her liver was destroyed. She had choked on her own vomit. She was severely malnourished. There were empty bottles everywhere. A neighbor said later, she was really and truly trying to stop drinking. It was tragic because she was so talented and suffering so much. Judy Garland's story started even earlier. She was just 10 when she was first given pills. By 15, she was hooked. At 17, during The Wizard of Oz, MGM executives forced amphetamines into her to keep her awake and thin. When filming ended, they'd knock her out with sleeping pills, only to wake her hours later with more speed. Judy said herself, they'd give us pep pills to keep us on our feet. Then they'd knock us out cold, then wake us up and give us more pills so we could work 72 hours in a row. That became her life, and it broke her. At 28, she tried to end her life for the first time. She would try again, at least 20 more times. In one terrifying moment, she slashed her throat with a razor. Her husband, Sid Luft, later wrote about it, saying, "What demons inhabited her soul? Just when life seemed so rich and productive, her drinking got worse. Her liver developed cirrhosis. By the time she was fired from Annie Get Your Gun and the Barclays of Broadway, her reputation was ruined. She showed up late. She didn't show up at all. Directors didn't want her. Studios blacklisted her. And behind the scenes, the IRS wanted millions from her. Near the end, she was living on people's couches. She was broke. Her concerts turned into train wrecks. Once, fans threw dinner rolls at her while she stumbled through a set. And yet, she kept performing. She had to. She had no other way to survive. On June 27, 1969, Judy Garland died in London. She was 47. Her blood had the equivalent of 10 Seconal capsules in it, enough to kill anyone. But her liver was so damaged from alcohol that even if she hadn't taken the pills, she might not have lived much longer anyway. Years earlier, she had described herself as a walking advertisement for sleeping pills. Lana Turner. She was one of the most glamorous stars in Hollywood, known around the world as the Sweater Girl. But behind Lana Turner's soft smile and hourglass figure was a deep, hidden pain that almost killed her long before her body gave out. Lana didn't stumble around drunk or cause scenes at parties. She was quiet about her addiction. She called herself a sipper, but what seemed harmless was far worse than it looked. The alcohol was slowly destroying her from the inside. Her weight dropped to just 95 pounds. Her liver was failing. She was getting sick more often. People didn't see it right away, but those closest to her feared she wouldn't survive. She tried to act like everything was fine, but her life was falling apart. 7 failed marriages, suicide attempts, 2 abortions, 3 stillbirths. Each heartbreak pushed her deeper into the bottle. The drinking didn't just come from the pain, it caused more pain too, and the cycle just kept going. Lana also smoked constantly. MGM even had to airbrush cigarettes out of her promo photos because it had become that bad. Years of alcohol and tobacco use finally caught up to her. In 1992, she was diagnosed with throat cancer, but just when it seemed too late, something changed. In her 60s, she finally quit drinking. She turned to herbal and holistic remedies. For a while, it worked. She got clean. but she couldn't quit the cigarettes. In July 1994, the cancer came back. This time, it didn't stop. Her weight dropped to 92 pounds, then 85. She couldn't eat on her own anymore. She had to be fed through a tube. The pain was constant. The woman who once lit up every movie screen disappeared from the public eye. On June 29, 1995, Lana Turner died at home. She was 74. Her daughter Cheryl was by her side. The world lost a star that day, Lee Marvin. Lee Marvin had the opposite image, the kind of man you'd expect to drink hard and fight harder. And that's exactly what he did. Lee was born in 1924 and started drinking young. At first, people in Hollywood thought it helped him. Some even said the alcohol made his performances better, but it didn't take long for it to become dangerous. There was one night when director John Boorman tried to stop him from driving home drunk. Lee wouldn't listen, so Boorman got behind the wheel. But Lee climbed onto the roof of the car and held on for miles down the Pacific Coast Highway. No seatbelt, no fear, just a drunk man clinging to the top of a speeding car. It sounds like a movie, but it was real. During the filming of The Professionals in 1966, Lee's drinking was so bad that co-star Burt Lancaster nearly lost it. Lancaster was usually calm and controlled, but even he was ready to throw Lee off the mountain where they were shooting. Things only got worse. On another film, Lee tried to prove how tough he was by punching his co-star, John Vernon, straight in the stomach without warning. It wasn't a stunt. It wasn't scripted. It was just drunk rage. He also had legendary drinking contests. One lasted 10 hours. Lee and British actor Oliver Reed went shot for shot until Lee passed out cold. That's how far he would go, just to win. But it wasn't just the sets or the bars where Lee's drinking caused chaos. His personal life was just as broken. His 6-year relationship with Michelle Triola turned into a public mess. In court, she spoke about terminated pregnancies, violent breakups, and constant drinking. She said it wasn't just bad, it was a full-blown addiction. By 1970, director William Fraker banned him from drinking on the set of Monty Walsh. That almost never happened in Hollywood, but Lee had become too unpredictable, too dangerous. He was also smoking heavily. By the 1980s, it had all caught up to him. He was in and out of hospitals. In 1986, he spent over 2 weeks being treated for respiratory problems. Steroid treatments caused his intestines to rupture. He had to get a colectomy. A year later, on August 29, 1987, Lee Marvin died of a heart attack. He was only 63. Even in death, his choices spoke loudly. He had 4 children with his first wife, Betty Ebling. But in his will, he left them only $10,000 to split. That was it. After everything, alcohol had taken nearly all of him. His health, his relationships, and even his legacy as a father.